Pope Francis urging an end to the violence in Israel. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has condemned the attack by Hamas. The UN Security Council is due to meet today over this crisis. We're joined by SABC News correspondent in New York, that's Sherwin Bryce-Pease. Thank you for being with us. Sherwin, the Secretary General spoke out pretty quickly. Tell us more about what he had to say.
Yeah, Antonio Guterres, quick off the mark in New York yesterday, issuing a statement, Francis, condemning in the strongest terms the attacks by Hamas against Israeli towns near the Gaza Strip in central Israel, including the firing of rockets towards Israeli population centers. We also heard from the High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, who said he was shocked and appalled by the reports that hundreds, possibly thousands of indiscriminate rockets had been fired by Palestinian armed groups. But what both those officials, those senior officials at the UN are calling for is urging diplomatic efforts to avoid a wider conflagration. The Secretary General stressing that violence cannot provide a solution to the conflict and that the only way ahead now is negotiations that can lead to a two-state solution. Volker Turk echoing some of those sentiments, calling for an immediate stop to the violence and an appeal to all sides and key countries in the region to de-escalate to avoid further bloodshed. So cue the UN Security Council here on Sunday, meeting this afternoon at around 9 p.m. South African time, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, and a briefing expected by Tor Vennesland. He is the Middle East Special Coordinator for the Middle East Peace Process, and he will really be able to give us an on-the-ground evaluation of what is going on, right? The numbers are fluid, the military operations are continuing, we don't really have a play-by-play of what is happening on the ground, so he will try to brief UN Security Council members on what is happening on the ground, but he is someone that appears before this UN Security Council, Francis, once a month on the Middle East file, and he has been warning now for years that the window of opportunity has been closing, given the developments, the settlement expansion we're seeing on the ground, changing the geography of that area that Palestine seeks to claim as a future independent state. So it's going to be very interesting to hear what he has to say today in terms of, like I told you so, that this was going to happen, these cycles of violence that make a two-state solution that much harder to achieve. But then again, you might see, the divisions that this council is so well known for. What will the United States say here? What will the Russians, the Chinese, some of the Arab nations on the council have to say? That will play itself out in close consultations later this afternoon here, but we hope to speak to council members as they emerge from that meeting.
Sherwin, does it feel like there's an incredible scramble? Countries positioning themselves. 2 days ago, we weren't talking about war. Now, war has been declared. So a very sudden shift in what's happening in the Middle East.
I mean, I would argue that a lot of people will not be surprised. I mean, Tor Vennesland, for example, has talked about these cycles of violence. There has not been peace in the Middle East for over 70 years. And you see every few months, every few years, an escalation. This has been quite a profound escalation given the casualties we are seeing on both sides, the destruction we are seeing on both sides. But many people that have watched this conflict over the years will say that there is a sense of deja vu when you see these actions play out. Yes, it might be on a much bigger scale today, but this is not new, and this has been spoken about. There have been warnings from UN officials time and time again that if we do not get back to a credible, direct, negotiated peace settlement to this conflict, you are going to see this perpetual cycle of violence repeat itself. So in terms of scrambling, yes, scrambling towards the current situation, Francis, but this should come as no surprise to many people that have observed this conflict over the years.
And because it has dragged on for years and peace has been so elusive and you have these divisions, is it correct to say, Sherwin, that there is no clear UN stance on this? I mean, there was that commission of inquiry saying that the Israeli occupation could be illegal under international law. That happened last year. What's happened since then? And am I right to say no clear one-pronged stance from the UN?
Well, this commission of inquiry was appointed by the Human Rights Council, which is based in Geneva, and the head of that inquiry is the former High Commissioner for Human Rights and a former Justice, Navi Pillay from South Africa, and they released their first report. They were appointed in May 2021. They released their first report in October last year, and what they found was that there were reasonable grounds, Francis, to conclude that the Israeli occupation of Palestinian territory is now unlawful under international law, due to its permanence and the Israeli government's de facto annexation policies, right? These settlement expansions that have been deemed illegal under international law. In fact, there is a UN Security Council resolution from 2016 in which the US administration under Barack Obama abstained, allowing that resolution to pass, that basically denounces any future settlements and demands that Israel stop. Of course, that is a resolution that continues to be ignored. This three-member panel of inquiry under Navi Pillay requested the General Assembly to ask the International Court of Justice, which is essentially the UN court based in The Hague, to render an advisory opinion on the following. What are the legal consequences arising from the ongoing violation by Israel of the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination from its prolonged occupation, settlement and annexation? And how do the policies and practices of Israel referenced in the previous paragraph affect the legal status of the occupation? That is an illegal opinion that has been asked formally by the General Assembly through a resolution last December. We now await that advisory opinion from the ICJ. We understand that that is a process that is ongoing, but they have not rendered that advisory opinion as yet. I can tell you that advisory opinions are binding on UN member states, but unfortunately, Francis, as so much that goes on at the UN, it does not have an enforcement capacity, so it doesn't have a military that can go and say, well, implement our ruling now.
All right, so that is pending. Final question, Sherwin, we are seeing countries and people around the world taking a stance, demonstrations pro-Hamas or pro-Israel. Anything planned in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, we are seeing reports now that there is a pro-Palestinian rally planned for right about now in Times Square, New York, a pro-Palestinian rally. I was just walking past the Israeli mission to the United Nations, which is around the block from where we are at UN headquarters, and we saw barricades outside the UN mission, which is an indication that they are probably expecting a pro-Israel rally in those quarters. I can tell you that any pro-Palestinian rally, given the timing of this, is seen as quite controversial in a country like the United States, which tends to be very pro-Israel. I can tell you the New York governor, Kathy Hochul, has called plans for the all-out for Palestine rally planned for Times Square today totally abhorrent and morally repugnant, condemning plans for the rally given the violent attacks and civilian kidnappings that have largely affected Israel in this instance, Francis.
All right, thank you so much. And he will follow that Security Council meeting and the outcome for us. SABC News correspondent in New York, Sherwin Bryce-Pease.